plus rise, the space where we excavate the extraordinary from the heart of the challenge. I'm your host, Thomas Carrier, and if you're feeling the pull towards a deeper purpose, a more impactful legacy beyond the peaks, or you may be already in that journey in the valleys that you want to conquer or get through, you're in the right place. Because just like 26.2 transformative miles I explore in my book, life's most significant chapters often begin when we dare to redefine our finish line. And yes, it is available to buy, and it's a bestseller. Today's guest, yes, I paused because there's so much about this amazing human, Veronica Lynn Clark. She's a trailblazer in personal transformation and intimacy, empowerment, and a somatic healer. She has got more than 2 decades of experience, and she has helped countless individuals. Veronica's work blends deep compassion with profound expertise. I had the privilege of meeting Veronica just once before this podcast, and there was something so magical, such an amazing persona. I realized that Veronica is, by just the conversation, her ability to demystify complex emotional and relational dynamics. It is a step towards healing and self discovery. And yes, I know I'm going on and on. Before that, I can continue. Let me welcome Veronica. Please welcome to Resilience plus Rise, the podcast.
Thomas, I am so excited to be here with you. This feels so good to just be joining you in conversation. I know that something wonderful is going to come from our sharing together and is going to touch many people. Thank you all so much for tuning in today.
So, Veronica, the question that comes up, of course, I was ready to tell a lot more, but that would, I would say, dilute this entire conversation. Let me start with something which is very simple. Who's Veronica?
Mm, mm. Well, simple yet, yeah, it's a deep question, actually. I am, I am, I am many things. I am a woman on a journey. I am an explorer. I am a spirit having a lot of fun here on this 3D dimensional plane. I am someone who has learned a lot through my life's experiences and have the privilege of being able to share a lot of the wisdom and the insights and the mistakes that I've learned through with other people.
Okay.
I'm someone also who absolutely loves other people, and I'm always looking for ways to deepen the experience of unconditional love for myself and also for other people, including those who are difficult sometimes too, who it feels like it's difficult to love and difficult to get along with. But um, I guess in some other shorter ways, I will say that I'm an alchemist, and I am also a scientist who is constantly in observation, always experimenting, learning, and transforming.
So you are a alchemist, a scientist, and as I've told before, absolutely in the sphere of transformation, not only for your own self, but for others also.
Yeah.
There is a point which I valiantly take off from Rumi, which I say is that our purpose comes from sometimes, and to most of us, our deepest of purpose comes from our deepest of wounds,
Yeah.
or the light shines brightest from our deepest of scars.
Yeah.
So, were you always this persona that I'm talking to? Or if you're allowed to say what happened, again, I give it up to you is that in case you want to talk about it, we talk, otherwise, we can move on to something else.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to dive into it. Um, so I want to just fill into to where to start. One is I agree with you and with Rumi that our light truly does come. Our light is always there. Our light is always, always within us, but it can be covered up and it can be buried. And when we come into this life, we experience so many different things and so much, difficulty and pain. And each of us has our own darkness that we must navigate and that we go through. And because of some of that darkness, and oftentimes we don't feel equipped to know how to navigate it, we get disconnected. We from our light, from our love, from our hearts, from source or from nature, whatever it is that you want to call it. And we as humans can get very lost. And I certainly got very lost for a time, which is unlike many other people. And I'm so grateful that during that lost, that lostness, being lost in the wilderness. It's interesting how you can read books and parables and so forth, and they talk about getting lost. But even during that time, um, as I look back, I always had support. And I want to talk to you. I want to share what I mean by that. But to give a little insight into my past is my journey started early with abuse, um, psychological, emotional abuse, physical abuse, and sexual abuse, and that began at 4 years old and was the earliest memories, and then continued pretty pervasively from 6 years old up until various points 17 years old. Some of that the abuse included having my arm broken, having cigarettes put out on me, um, and so there's a lot of physical things, and I would say the sexual abuse contributed to so much confusion and chaos internally. And so it was a really it was harsh. It was harsh and it was dark, um and and when I look back at myself in those different times, there was a big part of me that was very disconnected and like dissociated, which is so intelligent, which is such a like a wisdom that you know we have when we can't handle something. And I feel like it gets frozen until we can actually start to unpack and move through the pain, the difficulties, the complications that abuse creates. And for me, a time to unthaw, so to speak, and start to work through a lot of the pain in my past actually came in the form of a nervous breakdown in 2009, where I I hit a wall. I hit a wall. I couldn't go on anymore. I couldn't avoid looking at my past any longer. And, you know, I'm really fast forwarding a lot, and I'm happy for you
Hmm.
to ask any
True.
questions. But, there was a point where about 17, 18 years old, I had made a conscious choice to bury my past and bury the young girl that I was, and decided that I was going to be someone else and I was going to build a career and I was going to, raise children, and I was going to be 100% different than all of the other people in my life. And literally moved myself from California to Arizona by myself with a backpack and a pair of shoes on my feet. And, from 18 until let's say around 32, 33, I was a different person. But
Hmm.
then there was a collapse. There was a collapse where both my current reality and my old life came together, and I couldn't go further without confronting it. That is actually when I started to really meet myself.
Hmm. So when this breakdown took place, a lot of people they say yes, soul saving, and they've gone through this entire thing. Um, Blocking of the past. What did you do?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. There is a wisdom in putting things out of our consciousness until we can deal with it. Sometimes, a lot of times, it's not conscious. I would not have chose to have a nervous breakdown, but it
Hmm.
was the best thing that could have happened to me, because in order to have a breakthrough, we have to break down the old structures.
Perfect. True.
hmm
Hmm.
and that can come to us in many different ways. Now, for me, I recognize that I had been ignoring a lot of signs. So I ignored a lot of opportunities before that breakdown to start making changes in my life and to start looking at my pain. But I chose not to, because I thought, well, that's old. I'm going to put that away, and I want to move forward with my life, because this is what success is, and this is, there's a lot of messages in society that say, it's over, move on, get over it. So that is only helpful to a point. But at some point, you have to be able to look back at your life, and then it's about learning, how do I look at my life through the lens of love and compassion for myself? And that actually took a long time. This is actually what I teach people about. I I I have chose to believe that me being able to go back and look at my pain and to alchemize that and to transmute that has given me insight and guidance that I am able to share with other people on how to navigate the pain of their past. You started off this question by asking me, have I always been this light? I'm going to say, yes, I have been. My child self, my innocent, beautiful, curious child self has always been there. And unfortunately, things happened that really started to bury and you know disconnect me. But that part of our soul essence doesn't go away.
Wonderful.
It doesn't go away. And so what I do is I help people to rediscover who they really are, because I had to rediscover who I really am. I've tried many different approaches in my life. I tried, after I was going through the breakdown, which happened right at the height of my corporate career. I was married and I have 5 children and I had a business, and there were so many things. And from the outside, it looked like my whole life I had it all together. It was so different. My life looked so different than it did growing up, which there was a lot of poverty, emotional, financial poverty in my life. So my adult life looked very different, but inside I was really struggling to be able to hold it together. So the first approach that I had was, something's wrong with me. I'm broken. And a lot of people believe
Hmm.
that. I'm broken. My life is over. And, you know,
Uh,
it
uh,
happened. I think we're back now.
no, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
you know, and I want people listening to know that we're not broken. We're not broken at all. There's times where we get tore up and we are devastated and we don't know how to hold things together. And sometimes that's actually a gift, that we don't need to hold the old paradigms and old mindsets. We don't need to. There's a point where some of those things do need to collapse. And it takes time to be able to look at your life through a new lens. But if you don't look at your if you don't look at your light, or look at your life through the lens of compassion and appreciation for what you currently have, regardless of everything that you have lost, it makes our evolution in our consciousness, and our evolution in our health, and our evolution in our life even more difficult. And we actually throw ourselves back into another cycle of self-sabotage, where we are in some ways perpetuating the same beliefs that were instilled during the time that we were experiencing our pain and our loss and our suffering.
Um, Before I can go ahead, sorry if I've opened or allowed, I mean, those particular things, because again, when we talk about repressed memory or trauma blocking, etc., these are huge. And I've met people at times wherein when they go back over there, I mean, their core has to be really strong, or they have to be in that position of wherein they have surrendered and let go of that. That was because one of the key elements that I have always learned in my podcast or through talking to people is that when they understand is that life is not happening to me but for me.
Mhm.
And because these things happened, today I'm in a space wherein I can be, whether I can be the light or I can be the platform or I can be our spokesperson. Because let's face it, Veronica, you had that strength when you had the breakdown.
Mhm.
But especially in the first world countries and third world countries or second world countries, that's a different story. But first world countries, they give you some medication and you continue with that particular thing, or maybe, but there are times wherein you got to take the strength, I mean, you got to take back your own self.
Yeah.
What were few steps, I'm not asking like the medical aspects of, but what were few steps that you did that made you get control about your own self?
Yeah. Interesting enough, I had a friend, who said, "Hey, go see this psychiatrist, and
Hmm.
they're going to give you, a script, and you're going to feel better." And at this time, I felt pretty desperate. I mean, I went from high functioning and just doing it all. There was a point where I was like, I'm going to be the mayor of my city. I just was so active. I have so much passion and so much life, to absolutely not being able to handle my life. And I went to the psychiatrist. I had a meeting with them, and in less than 5 minutes, he wrote me a prescription for some medication. And I remember sitting in that seat across from him. I can still see it in my mind now. And I felt so offended. It was like my soul felt offended. And what came to me in that moment was, you didn't even listen to my story.
Hmm.
And now again, what I'm talking about, I still wasn't consciously aware of. So that was me realizing at that moment, medication is not for me. And so I never filled the script. And instead, I started to look for counseling for sexual abuse victims, because I thought, I don't know what is going on here. At that time, I didn't have any trauma awareness or trauma training. I was in real estate and in banking, and that's what I'd made my career in. Interestingly enough, I had actually had a group home at that same time, but I still had not personally done any work for myself, like gone to counseling or anything. But I was an advocate of giving back to the community. And so I'd was doing so many things for other people. So I finally went to the counseling and I said to the woman, I said, listen, I said, I have been through so many worse things in my life. I don't understand what's happening. What is happening to me? And she said, you have PTSD. And what struck the PTSD was the housing market crash. The housing market crashed, and I have my kids and my marriage was on the rocks and had been for many years. And so the fear of losing all that I had built cracked something in the core and made everything else start to come up, all my pain. And so thankfully, I was able to work through that with her, which was through EMDR, but more importantly, mindfulness and meditation. So the place that I went to for the counseling center actually happened to be a mindfulness based um, trauma center for sexual abuse victims.
Mhm.
And so we sat and meditated and we sat and looked at the pendulum, going back and forth, or we listened to the Tibetan sound bowls. And we wouldn't talk about our traumas. We learned how to just be present. We learned how to be mindful. And then, and during our individual sessions, I would talk about different situations. I would talk about different rapes or different things that I had went through, some very specific pieces. Initially, I thought, well, I don't want to talk about this
Hmm.
because this doesn't have anything to do with where I am today. And she helped me to see it has everything to do with where you are today. And so I was so blessed that not only was I getting the support that I needed, but I also had mindfulness and meditation. That I felt like was the thing that really helped to change my life, because talking about our past traumas, it can potentially throw you back into an old state, or not, you could get really stuck in feeling like I'm broken or there's no hope or what have you. And so we can spend years in talk therapy. But for me, what I found was being able to learn how to be moment to moment, one step at a time. I don't have to heal everything at one time. I can learn how to be in this present moment instead of continuously living in the past. And and so ultimately that was really as I look back at how I have formulated my own nomenclature, how I now take people through the process. I had to go through that process of what I call taking the long road to heaven. It was not easy. It was not easy learning how to have self-compassion. There was moments where I went through a lot of resentment, where I certainly blamed my parents, where I hated them, where I thought it was just, it was so difficult looking in. And because I had spent so many years building up a whole different version of myself, it felt I felt so much anger finally. I felt so much rage that I'd never had given myself permission to feel. Because while I was going through all the things that I was going through, I just wanted to live. I didn't know how to be angry. And I also didn't know that I could be angry. So when I started peeling back those layers, I finally got to access a lot of the emotions, a lot of the pain that I had never given myself permission to feel. And it was ugly, and it felt ugly. And thankfully, I did have some support to help me to walk me through that. So I didn't have to do it all alone.
A lot of questions comes up, but just being mindful of the time.
Yeah.
A question which comes up is, what could be one singular action item that any human, everybody has got have got their own challenges.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for advice, but as a suggestion, now in this last 2 decades of your experience, wherein you have helped people to transform, But if there is one piece of takeaway that you don't mind giving or telling people is that, guys, try doing this. It'll help you. It may not get them to the next level, but it'll get them to the next step at
Yeah.
times. What would that be?
Yeah. I'll give this a two-part answer.
Sure.
So the one thing is this: every single one of us gets a box of crap, something that we have to sort through. And each of us gets something that we are going to need to learn how to navigate. That's part of our own hero's journey. That's part of really, really beginning to, you have to know how to look at that box, that content, the life's challenges, the pain, whatever it is that you want to call it, and just say, look, this is what I've got. This is what I've experienced in my life. I've got to acknowledge that. I can't give it away. I can't wish that, it's not going to do me any good. I have to acknowledge these are the things that happened that were or were not in my control. And what am I going to do now? So the first step is acknowledging what you've got. Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Next, then you're going to have to decide, who do you want to be now? In spite of everything that has happened, who do you want to be now? Decide who you want to be. You have to next develop a tolerance for the unknown, right? Those
Mhm.
unknown factors. What else is going to come? How am I going to be prepared for this? You've got to develop a tolerance for the unknown, and you also then you don't ever give up. You don't ever give up on that person that you want to become. When you want to see yourself still thriving, you want to see yourself still like being able to overcome this, then I would say these are those 3 steps. 4 steps really: acknowledging what you have, decide who you want to be. Don't this developing that tolerance is really, don't expect it to be a linear path.
Of
It's
course.
not going to be a linear path. You've got to be open to you've got to be open to miracles. You've got to be open even to the breakdowns. You have to know that that's part of the human journey, even as you're going through the recovery or the healing process. You've got to know and do your best to, when you're going through these things, is to be as open to the sunlight as you possibly can. You've got to be willing to look for the good when you're going through these challenges of your life. You've got to be willing to look for the good. You've got to plant your feet down and say, okay, in this moment, it's tough. Looking over the content and the material of my life, it's tough. This is hard. This hurts. What's good right now? My feet are on the ground. I'm okay right now, in this moment. Look around you. What's good? I see the light. Call the light to you. And you cannot ever give up on yourself. And you can't give up on your hope.
That's absolutely wonderful. But again, so unfortunately, there's a but. Is that because when you talk about the word acknowledge, there's always the people, once they acknowledge yes, and they stick by those two words which defines them, the victim or the martyr,
Mhm.
and they love that because people's attention comes to them because of that. Oh, look at poor me, look what happened. And because of that adultation, they cannot let go of that. But again, when you talk about decide, it one reminds me wonderfully of from Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, wherein he says between the stimuli and the response there's a choice, and that's makes the difference.
Yes.
The freedom comes in that.
Yeah.
Again, as a coach, as a runner, or as an author, I know that first step may not take place, second step may not take place, n number of steps. Find there could be a breakthrough, but you got to decide to get to that particular level.
Yeah.
This has been such a wonderful journey. But before I leave, I know that you have got a lot on your plate.
Yeah.
And guys, whoever is listening to this, Veronica's social media information is there in the comments below. Do have a look. Do reach out to her. I know that people who are listening to it will never not hesitate to reach out to this amazing human called as Veronica. But what's there in the plate in the next few days or weeks coming up?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm excited to share with you about the One Human tour that I will be bringing to Venice, California. So I will be in Venice, and that's going to be September 4th through the 6th. People can learn more about it by visiting onehumanexperiences.com. Essentially, One Human is really about learning how to dissolve disconnection and start to come home to a sense of belonging within oneself, but also in community. One of the final pieces, and I don't like to say just like in healing, but in one of the awarenesses that I had was in order for me to continue to grow is I needed also to grow in community, to learn how to trust and be with other humans, because there's so many things that we can do on our own, but
Of
we can
course.
only go so far. So community is really this, it's that third ring of truly being able to come home to the heart of humanity. And One Human Experiences is my offering to the world that says, come learn what it is to be loved in community. Come and explore your limiting beliefs. Come explore your biases. Be willing to be open to a new experience of love with others and with yourself. So I will be in Venice. Come, do yourself. It's 3-hour workshop. It is so transformative. It will blow your mind at how expansive this transformation is.
So, guys, if anybody is in Venice or in California, this is a beautiful opportunity. Do reach out. And when you mentioned about community, I can totally say aha on that point, because that's another statement which I say proudly, is that we all are angels with one wing. When we hold another, that's when we fly higher. That's what humanity is all about, holding another. And I believe, Veronica, what comes up is, again, if you take a thought from the Bible, it says, love your neighbor, which is community, follows by as yourself. So, which means self care is there, and that's what you teach, is that about your self care and also about the community.
Yeah. You
Any
know,
parting thoughts that you would want to put across?
yes, as a matter of fact, I do.
Please.
I want to thank you for the work that you are doing and your podcast and all of the wonderful guests that you have and the different awarenesses and ways that people can heal and evolve their own consciousness. Thank you for doing the work that you do so consistently. It's one thing for us to talk about, well, what are these steps? The truth is that everybody has their own individual unique path. We can offer up as many maps as possible, but the journey to one's soul and evolving is up and down, and people need to have a place that they can come to and to trust, to consistently, take water from the well, so to speak, in the amounts that they can handle.
Sure.
And you provide one of those places for so many listeners around the world. And so thank you for your continued efforts and for your commitment to humanity and evolution. So thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so very much. That was very, very, I mean, kind is a small word, but thank you. You're very kind. Just